Happy Valentine's Day, Weather Weenies. It is all of this ice that we just had that is going to be causing a massive problem for this forecast that we have coming up. This is why it's going to be so hard. Let me give you all the details. You see, we know that we have about an inch of liquid equivalent that's going to be coming down from the sky on Saturday into Sunday's storm. The question is, how much of that is going to come down as this crispy stuff? Shout out to Alex and the entire crew in Goffstown. Let's science together. So we know we have a reasonable amount of snow headed our direction. We know that there's a good storm coming this way. And we know that it's cold enough for a lot of it to follow snow, especially in northern locations. For southern locations, that's going to be different. And we're going to talk through the transition and the placement of all of this. How far the warm air at the mid layers comes, which is what's going to give us the sleet, which is what's going to give us the freezing rain, erodes away from what we're going to get very, very quickly. So let's just do a quick recap here. If the snow ratios is like 1 to 10, or excuse me, let's just do like 1 to 12. And if we have, say, 1/10 of an inch of ice on top of that, you've got to start doing some math in your head. So if 1 inch of rain equals 12 inches of snow, say we end up getting 0.1 inch of freezing rain, that means that's going to drop this down to about, somewhere around 10 inches of snow. That's just if we get this specific amount. But what if these ratios are higher? And indications are they are going to be higher. Look at this deep dark orange. I mean, we're looking at like mid to high teen snow ratio. Forecasting is hard enough, and this is basically turning into a really complicated word problem where what we have to figure out for each of your individual locations is what time's the snow going to begin, how much of it's going to fall, and what are the ratios in like 1 and 2 hour increments. So think about this complicated math problem. It's like, how much snow will there be on the ground if for 2 hours you get snow that falls at a like 1 to 14 snow ratio, then it changes to 1 to 10 ratio, then you end up getting 0.1 inches of ice, it changes back over to snow on the backside. And then what's the compression weight of all that? Because you have to take that into account too. This is my way of telling you that this is incredibly complicated. So having said that, here's what I think is going to be happening. Here's the GFS model forecast. I'm going to show you a bunch of them here, so don't go locking this in yet. I'm showing you what's happening. The area where they see the blues, so we're looking at coastal locations for sure, through southeastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. This is like a 1 to 6 range. I realize that's a big spread. The closer you are to the purple, the more closer you are to 6, okay? Anywhere you start seeing these lighter purples, this is that 6 to 12 range, and anywhere you see these dark, deep purples, that's where we're looking at a foot or greater. So we're looking at most of the snow, according to the GFS, to be through northern Maine, through the whites of New Hampshire, and through the greens. And also if you're in Western Mass here, you're just going to be a little bit of a peak. The Euro model sees a much more straightforward foot plus throughout the entire North Country, and seeing that gradient come down through, probably cutting off through central Massachusetts about, maybe even having some slightly higher snowfall amounts in northern and western Connecticut, but otherwise, once again, that 1 to 6 along all of the coastal locations. Those two models are two very long-term models. They go out basically 2 weeks. They have like every 3-ish hour resolution available publicly. They're not super granular. The graph model that I'm going to show you only goes out 72 hours, but it has 30-minute resolution and you get a new forecast every hour. So it's a completely different forecast model than those two. It's much more granular, but where we're on the front near side of like really close to the event for those large scale models, we're still on the back half of this graph model's forecasting. So I don't want to say that's not as accurate or can't be trusted as much. Just know that the further away you are from the starting period of that model, the little different it gets. But its snowfall forecasts are interesting. The graph model says we're in for a lot more snow than what those two models are saying. So if we look in areas of the blue, those are going to be, let's just go ahead and call it single-digit snowfall amounts. Or when we start getting into the purples, we're getting to the doubles. And if you see hot, hot pink, we're looking at 20. This paints a very different picture here. So seeing once again the 1 to 6 along coastal areas through Connecticut, Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts. Seeing those numbers really start to jump, but a little bit more so than what I would expect. Talking about double digit snowfall, more than the 6. If we're going through northwestern Massachusetts out here, through a lot of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine as well, unless you're just right along these coastal locations, with some specific places here in the central greens, up in the whites, maybe getting 20. So how in the hell do we resolve all that? What I take from that is that I think the Euro and the GFS are in fairly good agreement. I think the Euro is probably a little bit more accurate, and I think we're going to see some slightly higher snowfall totals than what we see. And if this is erring on the wrong side, I don't think those GFS and the Euro models are too low or too high. If anything, I think they're going to be a little bit too low according to what the graph says. So I made you a map. I never make maps. This is the map that we are going to be going with here. So 1 to 6 throughout coastal locations. I realize that's a massive spread. The closer you are to this white line, the more likely you are to see 6. The closer you are to coastal locations, the lower it's going to be. Remember, the amount of ice that we're going to get and the amount of rain that's going to fall is going to drastically change. Also through these locations, your rain's going to come after your snow. So you're going to just be left with slush. You're not getting white fluffy, okay? That's just not how it's going. 6 to 12, I think, very broadly throughout this location. Once again, the closer to this white line you are, the more likely you are to get 6. And the places that you see in red are very high risk. You could get more, but you could not, especially up here. This is going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know. It's hard to say prepare for 6 to 24 inches of snow, but that's absolutely the case right up here in this one. We always see a little bit high totals in these mountainous areas, so that's fine. Nothing crazy there. What I want you to understand, though, is that as you're looking at the snow and as the snow is falling, if you start noticing that it is freezing rain, that it is sleeting, for every, I don't know, half hour it does that, pull away about an inch of how much you can expect for that snow to fall. This is so incredibly dynamic. So I expect some of this rain and ice to move into these areas, which I think is what I'm going to keep some of these snow totals in this area a little bit lower because we get ice. Also know that if we don't get any ice, if it's going along here and we're not getting any freezing rain layers, we're not getting any sleet layers, these numbers may end up going a little bit higher. So once again, I can't understate how dynamic this is and how difficult this is to forecast. National Weather Service office is showing a very generic and broad, like 6 to 12 throughout kind of everywhere with not too much extremes. I just think we're going to end up seeing more differentiation than what we see in this. Let's talk timing. Saturday afternoon for most locations, unless you're very far to the west of New England. Saturday lunchtime plans, you're still fine. As you start creeping into dinner time, this is when things are going to start changing, unless you're very far east, unless you're like way out there in Maine. Then that might be a different story. And if you have Saturday evening plans, you might be fine. Sunday's just going to be a complete washout. And this is going to start clearing out and getting its way out of here during the very, very early hours of Monday morning. So hopefully Monday morning's commutes, drives, travel plans, stuff like that are only minimally impacted. The other thing we need to briefly talk about is ice and wind. Ice forecasts for Sunday are very interesting through southern New England, especially if you're looking through central or western Massachusetts, northern and western Connecticut. The ice is going to be a concern for a couple of reasons. One, we're getting snow that's going to be falling, and any freezing rain that's going to be soaking into that snow is going to make it wet and heavy, and it's going to get that crust on it, kind of like you have outside right now. That's going to weigh things down. It's going to make them heavier. So obviously there's freezing rain concern about it bringing down branches, causing accidents, causing power outages. As the storm moves through, I want you to go ahead and look at what happens with the wind forecasts. This is what the winds are going to be doing on Monday. They're going to be gusty. It's going to be wild. Just notice outside today here, like overnight last night and today, how windy it's gotten. It's going to do the same on Monday. 40 and 50 mile an hour winds with ice-loaded branches could potentially cause a problem, and one that I'm not excited about. Don't forget, you can go to weather.gov. You can click on where you live. I want you to go down and find on your homepage the winter weather graphic. And in here, they do have a bunch of graphics, snowfall forecasts, and all kinds of stuff like that. What I really want you to see is this like onset end timing graphics. Sorry, I don't know why my phone's totally being weird. It'll actually help show you when you can expect to start having the precipitation begin where you live. And don't forget, by entering your zip code in that top left corner and scrolling down and finding your weather graph, this is going to give you incredible information about the timing exactly where you live.